Tales of the Washington County Courthouse. Buildings often have interesting stories of their own to tell, and the Washington County Courthouse is one of those unique ones. The stories can be so colorful, so vibrant from the Old West and the frontier days of Oklahoma that many of them still live on. The courthouse itself has several put on plaques out front of the building. They can read like high drama, for example. 80 men were summoned before a jury could be selected to determine the fate of Mac Billingslea, who was accused in the April 1920 shooting death of police officer J.L. Crow. A simmering feud between the two ended with a shootout in front of a local taxicab office. Tales of the shooting were filled with discrepancies, with each side providing witnesses that the other fired the first shot. The courtroom was packed as the audience heard testimony of searches for illegal whiskey, jealousy over a former wife, and death threats. The jury acquitted Billingslea after deliberating 4 hours. Gunfire echoed through the halls of the courthouse in March 1926 when Colonel Bill Easley, wielding a gun in each hand, took aim at his son-in-law, Clem Binning. Observers said Binning's gun fell to the floor as he scrambled to hide his child behind a cornerstone. Binning zigzagged across the courthouse lawn to avoid bullets as he raced to his car to get a rifle. Unable to get a clear shot, Binning ordered a deputy to move or get shot. Easley leveled his gun at Binning, but it jammed. Binning fired. Easley muttered an oath against his son-in-law as he fell to his death. Although the shooting was ruled self-defense, Binning's problems were not over. He was reportedly poisoned while drinking with a friend of Easley's. Binning left the state shortly thereafter. So goes the romantic lore. Often the real story has a much more personal tone.
There's one in particular I'm not quite sure I should tell this here, but this, well, it was in the newspaper and everything, but there was a gentleman, but we still have people from the area who were related to the families. There's a man who had married an Osage woman, and he was a white man, and so he had, as the head of the household, had control of the head rights and all the land allotments for all the children. And they had several children. And then as the children grew up and got older, then they wanted control of their own head rights. And there was a fight between the father and the son, and then a daughter as well, for control of the head rights. The kids lived here in Bartlesville, and the father still lived out. And his father and mother still lived out on the land in Osage County. When it came time to go to court, because the father wanted the kids declared incompetent so he would continue to have control. When it was determined, and this would have been in Pawhuska, when it was determined that the children lived in Bartlesville, then they moved the venue to here in Bartlesville. And at that time, then the day when they were having this, the hearing, the people had commented, and we have newspaper articles that will confirm, it's where we got our information. But the children, people were commenting that the father was looking rather nervous and anxious, and he was keeping an eye out on the door. And when the son-in-law came into town, he was holding the son's child. The father pulled out a gun and started firing. Well, the son-in-law came out of those front doors, which faced the west, and down the steps, and those steps curve, and he came around the back side so that there was some protection. A deputy sheriff was struggling with the father because he had the gun and had fired a couple of shots there in the courthouse. Someone else, it had gone across, and I believe it was the son himself, had gone across the street because that was where he was parked, and pulled a rifle out of his car. The deputy says he saw him with the gun aiming, so he tried to stay as still as possible. And the son got the shot off and killed the father. Well, they took him to the courthouse, or to the jail, and he was wanting to put up his land for bond. And so when that came the question, where do you live? Where is your? And he pointed out on the map, and they said, no, that's where your father lives. But that was the son's head right. That was the best piece of land in all the land that was apportioned to the family. The father had built a very large house there. And so if the son wound up getting the land back, then the father and mother would be without a place to live, or they would be in a much less desirable place to live. But it kind of gives you an insight of some of the turmoil that went on with struggles within families, struggles in Osage County. There was that situation where white men would come in and be given guardianship over the Indians because supposedly the Osage couldn't manage their own affairs. Well, they had come from, they're a different culture. They were not the white man's wheeling and dealing culture. And so there were a number of white men that made a very good profit off of the Osage because their culture was not the same, and it was very unfortunate. But that's one of those kind of a black eye, but that was part of the history. Stories like that really reflect things that go on. The courthouses definitely changed people's lives if it went against you. And the law is a little different than it is now. But it was a place of authority, and people respected that authority because the lawmen of the time had the authority to back up and to support the laws of the land. They did. And so it did influence. And so to have a grand building such as that, it was a mark, and maybe in some ways a status symbol, but it was a mark of authority and of importance. You couldn't just drive by and ignore it. That's a building that caught your eye.